If you're scared of my face, you can leave now." Her voice was soft, almost steady, but the sentence struck Marcus like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. He froze halfway between the entrance and her small table near the window, the morning light slanting across her features, or rather, across the part of her features that still remained untouched by the fire years ago. Seattle's gray drizzle blurred the world behind her, but nothing could blur the shock in his chest. He hadn't been prepared. Not for this, not for her. He swallowed hard, unsure if his voice would work if he tried to answer. Instead, his eyes drifted over the left side of her face, the taut, glossy skin, the way the burn curved upward toward her temple, how it pulled slightly at the corner of her lip. It wasn't grotesque, it wasn't frightening, it was just human. And yet he stood there like he'd hit a wall. Ava lowered her gaze, as though she'd already predicted his reaction. She wrapped her hands around a ceramic mug, knuckles pale. Her posture was rigid, but her voice held something deeper, the exhaustion of someone who had repeated this same line, this same defense, to too many people. "You don't have to do this," she said, barely above a whisper. "Most people don't." The words jolted him. Not out of guilt, he hated pity, both giving and receiving, but because the sadness beneath her calm tone was too familiar. He'd heard something like it in his own voice once, after a lifetime of being sized up for the color of his skin before anyone bothered to learn his name. Slowly, he forced himself forward, one step, another. The bell above the door chimed behind him as it closed. The scent of roasted beans settled around him. The low hum of a morning radio filled the space between them. He didn't speak yet. He didn't trust his mouth not to betray the tangle inside him. When he finally reached her table, he stopped, inhaled, and said the only words that didn't feel like lies. "May I sit?" She hesitated for a breath, a long, examining one, then nodded. He pulled the chair out, the wooden legs scraping softly against the floor. As he sat, he felt the woman behind the counter glance over at them. She was in her 70s maybe, with silver hair tied in a loose bun and an apron dotted with coffee stains. Her eyes held a kind of calm wisdom, the kind elders carried, the kind that reminded him of Sundays in Tacoma when the older neighbors would lean on porch rails to watch over the block. She didn't stare in judgment. She stared like she already understood something he didn't. Ava shifted in her seat. "I'm sorry," she murmured, fingers tapping the rim of her mug. "I just wanted to say it before you did. People sometimes freeze up. It's easier if I say it first." "Is that what you thought I was doing?" he asked carefully. Ava lifted her eyes to his, one brown, one glistening with the faint reflection of the burn's texture. "You stopped walking." He blinked. "Yeah," he admitted. "I did." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, not quite pain, somewhere between. "I understand." But she didn't. Not really. Because she didn't know the thousand thoughts colliding in his head, the betrayal he felt toward Devon for not telling him the truth, the shock of meeting someone whose courage was written across her skin, the instinctive guilt for reacting like any other person she must have encountered in the past 4 years. Still, he found himself saying, "I'm here, aren't I?" Ava stared at him for a beat too long. Then she nodded, breath shaking subtly as she lifted her mug again. Marcus glanced around the room to ground himself. It was a small, cozy cafe, wooden beams, mismatched chairs, local art hanging crookedly along the walls. A radio from decades past crackled softly, broadcasting the low rumble of morning talk. It was the kind of place older folks liked, familiar, warm, steeped in stories. The kind of place where people came to think rather than to hurry. He liked places like that. Ava cleared her throat. "Devon didn't tell you, did he?" "No," Marcus answered. "He didn't. I'm sorry. I told him not to." Marcus let out a slow exhale. "That would have been nice to know before I walked in." She winced. "I know. But," he added quickly, surprising even himself, "I'm not mad at you." She tilted her head. "You're not?" He shook his head. "No. I just needed a second." Another drizzle. Heavy silence settled between them. The windows fogged slightly. A couple in their 50s walked in, shaking rain from their jackets, greeting the barista with the ease of routine. Marcus noticed Ava's shoulders stiffen when the couple's eyes flicked toward her. He leaned back in his seat, letting his posture soften, letting his presence say the thing he didn't know how to phrase. "You're not alone here." "Thank you for not walking out," she said eventually. He studied her face again, not the burn, but the strength it took to sit here at all. "Thank you for staying," he replied. Her eyes lifted, meeting his, and for a brief, unguarded second, the weight she carried seemed to shift, even if only slightly. The bell above the door chimed again. The old woman behind the counter stepped closer and placed a fresh pot of coffee on a warmer. "Morning's gentle today," she said, her voice raspy but warm. "Good day for new company." Marcus felt the comment land in the quiet space between him and Ava. He glanced at Ava, who was staring at her hands now, twisting a napkin nervously. He didn't press her with questions, didn't ask what happened, didn't ask why she'd prepared herself for rejection. He simply sat with her, letting the stillness grow comfortable. Because sometimes, especially for people who've been hurt, comfort speaks louder than curiosity. The rain outside grew steadier, a soft percussion against the glass. Marcus felt something subtle shift, not a dramatic revelation, but the first faint click of a door opening inside him. He didn't know what this was yet. He didn't know if he was ready, but he knew he wasn't leaving. Not now. Not after the way she'd said that first sentence. Not after seeing the quiet fight in her posture. Ava took a breath, lifted her mug again, and finally said, "So, what brought you here, Marcus?" He met her gaze and answered honestly, "I think I'm still figuring that out." And for the first time since he walked in, she smiled, small, fragile, but real. It was enough to begin something neither of them could name yet, but both could feel. The rain had softened into a steady whisper by the time Marcus settled into his seat, but the hum inside the cafe still felt louder than it should have. Maybe it was just the quiet between him and Ava, a quiet that wasn't uncomfortable but carried the tension of two people trying to understand each other without saying too much. Ava shifted slightly, brushing a loose curl behind her ear, the unscarred side of her face catching the warm light from the hanging lamp above. "You don't have to pretend you're okay," she murmured without looking up. "I've had a lot of practice reading the moment someone's ready to bolt." Marcus leaned back, letting the chair creak beneath him. "I'm still here, aren't I?" She let out a breath that was part disbelief, part relief, and took a slow sip from her mug. Silence settled again, but it was less sharp this time. He found himself looking around the cafe, taking in details he'd overlooked earlier. The mismatched chairs, the old jukebox in the corner that probably hadn't played in years, the framed newspaper clippings along the wall, yellowed with age, but neatly arranged as if someone still cared about them. A couple in their 60s sat near the counter, greeting the barista by name. It was the sort of place where people belonged, a small corner of Seattle where time moved slower, a place older folks trusted, a place where strangers softened faster. Ava followed his gaze and almost smiled. "I come here a lot. People mind their business, mostly. Seems peaceful," he said. "Peaceful's hard to find these days." Ava's eyes flickered, the faintest hint of something heavier beneath her tone. Marcus sensed the start of a story, but she didn't elaborate. Not yet. He wasn't going to push. Instead, he reached for the paper menu tucked behind the napkin holder, more to ground the moment than to read it. "You eaten yet?" She shook her head. "Not really. I wasn't sure you'd actually come," he smirked. "Well, I'm here, and hungry. So what's good?" That surprised her, a genuine spark lighting her expression. "The waffles," she said, "and the cinnamon toast. The owner makes her own butter blend." "It's addictive." "Dangerous information," he replied. "I'll take the risk." Ava hesitated for a moment, then raised her hand slightly to catch the older woman's attention. The owner shuffled over, pen and pad ready, her smile warm but not intrusive. "What can I get for you two?" she asked. Marcus glanced at Ava before answering. "Waffles, with that magic butter blend I keep hearing about," the woman chuckled. "Good choice. And you, dear?" "Just tea," Ava said softly. "The chamomile." The owner nodded knowingly, as though she'd served Ava that same tea 100 times before. "I'll bring it right out." As she walked away, Marcus folded his hands on the table. "So," he said, "you come here often." "I do. It's one of the few places where people don't stare too long, or if they do," she shrugged, an attempt at nonchalance. "They pretend they didn't." Marcus didn't respond right away. He didn't want to say something clumsy, something that would sound like pity instead of understanding. Instead, he let his voice drop into something slower, steadier. "People can be cruel," he said, "or careless." "Careless," she repeated thoughtfully. That's a good word for it. The food arrived sooner than expected, a plate of golden waffles dusted with powdered sugar, steam rising in soft curls, and a small cup of melted butter that smelled sweet and warm. Ava's tea came in a deep blue mug, the kind that felt heavy in your hands. Marcus took a bite, eyebrows lifting in appreciation. "All right," he said, pointing his fork at her. "You weren't lying. This is dangerous." Ava laughed, a sound lighter than he expected. "I warned you." "You did. And I ignored you. That's on me." She sipped her tea, and for a brief moment, she seemed relaxed, the tension in her shoulders easing. Marcus let the scene settle in the softness of the moment, the gentleness of the room, the way Ava's eyes stayed on the window, as though she was looking at a world she wasn't sure she belonged to anymore. He wondered how many times she had sat here, hoping for a day when no one would stare at her scar, wondering whether she would ever stop anticipating rejection. "You said people bolt," he spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "But I don't think you're just talking about strangers in cafes." Ava lowered her mug. The smile faded, replaced by something quieter. "I'm talking about everyone," she said. "Friends, family, people who meant something to me." Marcus nodded, not pressing, letting her say as much or as little as she wanted. She sighed and pulled at the sleeve of her sweater, a nervous habit she didn't seem aware of. "After the accident, well, people showed their true colors. Some didn't know how to look at me anymore. Others pretended nothing changed, which somehow made it worse. And a few—" She hesitated, eyes fixed on the table. "A few made it very clear I didn't fit in their world anymore." Marcus felt a familiar sting, the memory of being told in subtle ways that he didn't fit either, not because of scars, but because of skin. "That says more about them than it ever could about you," he said. She looked up, studying him. "Maybe, but it still hurt." "Yeah," he murmured, "it always does." The rain outside thickened again, painting wavering reflections across the glass. A pair of older men sat near the jukebox, arguing about baseball stats and laughing like they'd been doing that same thing for decades. There was something comforting about it, about people who stayed in each other's lives long enough to argue the same arguments. Ava seemed to notice them too. "I like places with regulars," she said quietly. "Feels safe, I guess. Predictable." "Predictable isn't always bad," Marcus said. "Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps us steady." She studied him, weighing his words. "You sound like someone who's been through things too." "We all have," he answered, letting the truth slip through his tone. "Some of us just don't wear it on our skin." Ava's gaze softened, not in pity, but in recognition. A shared understanding. A language older than either of them, spoken between people who had learned to brace themselves before walking into the world each day. "Thank you," she said after a long breath, "for sitting here, for not pretending everything is normal and also not treating me like I'm made of glass." "I didn't think you were made of glass," he replied. "If anything, you seem stronger than most people I know." She exhaled a shaky laugh. "I don't feel strong. Most people who are strong don't." Her eyes shimmered, just enough to betray emotion she didn't want to show. But she didn't look away, and he didn't either. There was no grand moment, no dramatic music. Just two people, sitting in the warm quiet of a Seattle cafe, beginning something neither of them had expected when they walked in that morning. And when Ava finally leaned back in her chair, letting her guard loosen another inch, Marcus couldn't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where he was meant to be. By the time Marcus stepped out of the cafe, the rain had slowed to a thin mist that clung to his jacket and settled in his hair, but he barely noticed it. His mind was still inside, still at that small table with Ava's tea cooling between her palms and her quiet voice lingering in the air. He replayed every moment as he walked toward the parking lot, the hesitation in her eyes, the way her fingers curled around her mug, the calm steadiness she tried to maintain even when fear crept in from the edges. And beneath it all, the way she had looked at him at the end, as if she wasn't used to someone choosing to stay. He pulled out his phone, hesitating before tapping Devon's name. It rang twice before the familiar voice answered. "Yo, you survived?" Marcus stopped under the awning outside the bakery next door. "You didn't think I would?" "Man, I wasn't sure. I figured you'd see her and turn right back around." "I considered it," Marcus admitted, "but I didn't." "So?" Devon asked, stretching the word out with a grin Marcus could hear even through the phone. "What happened?" Marcus exhaled, leaning against the cold brick wall. "She's different." "Different how?" "Not what I expected," he said, "and not what you told me." "I didn't tell you anything," Devon countered. "I told you to show up. The rest was on you. You knew she had a burn scar." "Yeah," Devon said, "but if I'd told you, you would have bailed." "I might have." "Exactly," Devon replied. "But I also knew you, man. Knew you wouldn't walk out once you saw she's more than the damn scar." Marcus rubbed the bridge of his nose. "It still feels like you set me up." "Maybe I did," Devon said lightly. "But sometimes people need a push." Marcus didn't argue. He wasn't sure what he was feeling yet, only that the morning had changed something in him, whether he'd meant for it to or not. "You gonna see her again?" Devon asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. Part of him wanted to say no, to keep things simple, familiar, predictable. Life was easier when you didn't open doors that might close on you later. But another part, a quieter part, a part he usually ignored, kept replaying Ava's small smile, the way her eyes softened when he didn't bolt, how she seemed to rediscover something she'd been missing. Hope, maybe, or the faintest beginning of trust. "Yeah," he finally said, "I think I will." "Good," Devon chuckled. "Don't overthink it." "I always overthink it." "Then think less, do more." Marcus shook his head with a half smile and hung up, sliding the phone into his pocket as he stepped into the parking lot. His truck sat where he left it, damp from the mist, but before he climbed in, he glanced back toward the cafe window. Ava was still inside, her silhouette framed by the warm lights. She was looking down, maybe at her sketchbook, maybe at her tea, maybe at nothing at all, but she looked, still. Someone fighting through life quietly, someone trying not to take up too much space. He wondered how long she'd been living like that, waiting for someone to leave before they had the chance to stay. Later that afternoon, back at his apartment, Marcus tried to distract himself with chores, laundry, dishes, tightening the loose hinge on the cupboard, but Ava kept drifting back into his thoughts. The scar was the first thing he'd noticed, yes, but not the thing staying with him now. What lingered was her voice, her gentleness, her strength, even when she didn't think she had any. Around sunset, he found himself scrolling through his messages, nothing new from her. He wondered if she was second-guessing everything. He wondered if she assumed he'd changed his mind already. He typed out a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. He didn't want to sound overeager, but he didn't want to leave her waiting, either. Finally, he sent a simple, steady line, "I'd like to see you again." The reply came almost a minute later, just long enough to show she hesitated, but not long enough to suggest she'd talked herself out of it. "I'd like that too." He stared at the message longer than necessary before typing, "Tomorrow morning, Green Lake?" Her response was shorter this time, almost shy. "Yes." He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath until his chest loosened. The next morning, he arrived early. The lake was quiet, the walking paths empty except for a few older joggers and a woman feeding ducks near the dock. The sky was a dull blue-gray, typical Seattle, carrying the promise of rain but not yet delivering it. He waited, hands in his pockets, watching the mist drift above the water. Then he saw her. Ava walked slowly toward him, bundled in a dark green coat, hair tied back loosely. She paused a few feet away, as though giving him one last chance to change his mind. "Morning," she said. "Morning," he replied, offering a small smile. "You okay?" "Nervous," she admitted. "But I'm here." "That's enough," he said gently. They began walking around the lake, their steps sinking in a quiet rhythm. Ava kept her gaze forward, occasionally glancing at the birds skimming across the water. "Thank you for texting," she finally said. "I wasn't sure if well, yesterday was a lot." "It was," he agreed, "but a good lot." She let out a breath that fogged in the cool air. "Do you always talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're trying not to scare someone off," Marcus chuckled lightly. "Only when someone looks like they're used to being scared off." She didn't answer, but the corner of her mouth lifted. After a few minutes, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small sketchbook. "I draw," she said simply. "It helps when my thoughts get loud. Can I see?" She hesitated, then handed it to him. The pages were filled with gentle pencil strokes, trees bending in the wind, people sitting at park benches, a couple holding hands from behind. Her work had a softness to it, a way of capturing moments that others would overlook. "You're really good," he said. "Thank you," she replied quietly. I sketch people I notice. Not their faces usually, just their presence. That's a beautiful way to put it. She shrugged lightly. Faces are complicated. He didn't miss the underlying meaning. They walked a little farther, and for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel fragile. It felt steady, natural. When they circled back near the parking lot, the breeze picked up, brushing loose strands of hair across her cheek. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Glad I did too," he answered, and he meant it. As Ava headed toward her car, she paused and turned back. "Marcus?" He looked up. "Yeah? Thank you for not bolting yesterday." He smiled. "Ava, I'm not going anywhere." Her breath hitched slightly, like she wasn't used to hearing that sentence. She nodded, got into her car, and drove off. Marcus stood there long after her taillights disappeared, realizing something he hadn't expected. He wanted to see where this would go, wanted to understand her more, wanted to see the person behind the gentleness and the scar and the quiet courage, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the faint beginning of something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. Not forced, not pursued, just real. Morning. The morning at Green Lake had a quiet familiarity to it, the kind of calm that settled into a person's bones if they stood still long enough. Marcus arrived a little earlier than planned, partly out of habit, partly because something about meeting Ava again made him restless in a way that didn't feel uncomfortable, just alert. The air was cool, the sky layered with pale silver, and ducks drifted along the water as if they had nowhere in particular to be. It reminded him of the mornings his mother used to drag him out for early walks before school, saying the world only told the truth at sunrise. He had never fully understood it until now. Ava arrived with a soft crunch of gravel, her steps measured, almost cautious. She wore a navy jacket zipped high up her neck, hands tucked deep into the pockets. From a distance, she looked like any other Seattle resident bracing against the chill. It wasn't until she came within a few steps of him that the faint tension around her eyes revealed she was bracing against more than the weather. "You're early," she said, stopping beside him. "So are you," he replied. She offered a small smile. Something unspoken passed between them, the kind of acknowledgement that didn't need naming. They began walking along the lake's edge, keeping a slow pace. Ava's gaze stayed low at first, watching her shoes trace the path. Marcus let her set whatever rhythm she needed. "I used to come here before work sometimes," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "It was easier to be around people when I was moving. Harder for them to stop and stare." "Makes sense," Marcus said. "Movement keeps you from feeling trapped." "Exactly." She paused for a long breath. "I stopped coming for a while. After the accident, being around people," she trailed off, searching for the right words. Marcus didn't fill the silence. "It felt like the world turned into a room full of mirrors," she continued. "Just reflections of my face everywhere, and every one of them made me feel smaller." He turned slightly toward her, his voice softening. "Ava, the only people who stare are the ones who haven't lived enough to understand suffering." She looked at him with a small spark of surprise, as though she'd expected something gentler or vaguer. "You say things in a way that sounds like you've rehearsed them." "Never rehearsed," he said, smiling faintly. "Just lived." She didn't respond, but he saw the understanding flicker through her eyes. They kept walking until they reached a bench near the water. Ava gestured for them to sit, and Marcus lowered himself beside her, stretching one leg out in front of him. From here, the lake looked wide and still, almost like a sheet of glass under the dim light. "Do you ever draw it?" Marcus asked, nodding to the water. Ava pulled her sketchbook from her bag as though she'd been waiting for him to ask. "All the time," she said, "especially the way the trees look when the wind hits them." She opened to a page filled with willow branches bending into the breeze, their shapes captured in soft, careful strokes. Marcus leaned in, studying the lines. "You draw feelings," he said, "not just things. Is that good or bad?" "It's rare," he said. "People see the world, but not many people see the truth of it." She held his gaze a moment longer than usual before flipping to a new page. Without saying anything, she began sketching quick, fluid strokes. Marcus stayed quiet, watching the pencil move with surprising confidence. He realized it was the first time he had seen her absorbed in something without tension, without fear. She looked free in that moment, freed by lines and graphite and the certainty of her own hands. When she finished, she turned the sketchbook toward him. It was him, or at least a soft interpretation of him. The shape of his shoulders, the line of his jaw, the way he leaned slightly when he listened. It wasn't precise like a photograph, but it was unmistakably him. "How did you do that so fast?" he asked, genuinely stunned. "I don't draw faces much," she said, "but I draw presence." He blinked slowly, speechless for a moment. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." She closed the sketchbook and hugged it loosely to her chest. "I just wanted you to see how I see you." Marcus stared at her, realizing it had been a long time since someone saw him with that kind of clarity, without suspicion, without assumptions, without the lens of what he looked like, or where he came from, or the color of his skin. He didn't realize how heavy that unspoken weight had become until this quiet moment lifted it just enough for him to breathe easier. A jogger slowed as she passed, eyes flicking to Ava's scar before darting away. Ava stiffened. Marcus noticed, and he shifted slightly closer, a subtle gesture, as if shielding her from something she'd already endured too many times. "People stare," she whispered. "But staring doesn't make them right," he replied. "You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt," she said. "I'm not pretending," he answered. "I just know hurt doesn't get to decide who you are." She inhaled, held the breath, then let it out slowly. "You're different from most people I've met. Is that a good thing?" "It scares me," she admitted, "because I don't know what to do when someone doesn't run away." "I'm not running," he said. "I know," she murmured. "That's what scares me." They stood again and continued walking. The path curved around a grove of tall pines, their needles scattering across the ground in damp clusters. Birds rustled in the branches above. The morning deepened into something warmer, softer, as if the light itself was adjusting to the presence of two people trying quietly to heal. "Ava," Marcus said after a while, "can I ask you something?" She glanced at him. "Sure. Did you always draw?" "Since I was a kid," she replied. "It was the one thing I was good at, the one thing I could count on not to vanish." "And after the accident?" She paused at a break in the trees, looking out across the lake. "I stopped for a long time. Couldn't look at anything without thinking about what I'd lost. Then one day, I opened my sketchbook and drew a willow tree. Just one. It wasn't good, but it was honest. And I realized, even broken things still cast shadows, still move with the wind, still exist. So maybe I could too." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a quiet ache, the kind that came from recognizing resilience in someone who didn't yet recognize it in herself. "You did more than exist," he said. "You survived something most people never face." She looked down at her shoes, toes nudging a small pebble on the path. "Surviving isn't the same as living." "Maybe not," he said. "But sometimes surviving is the first step." She gave him a look so fragile it made him want to reach out to touch her hand, or her arm, or just remind her she wasn't alone in this world. But he didn't. Not yet. The timing didn't feel right. The walk ended near the same bench where they'd started. Ava paused, gripping her sketchbook tightly. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "I wasn't sure this was a good idea, but it feels better than I expected." "Me too," he replied. "Whenever you want to meet again, just say the word." She nodded, eyes warm but cautious, the way someone might look at an unopened door they weren't sure led to safety or danger. Then she whispered, "Tomorrow?" Marcus smiled. "Tomorrow." She walked away slowly, and he stayed until she disappeared down the path. Something about the empty space she left behind felt oddly full of possibility, full of the beginning neither of them had planned for. And as he headed back to his truck, the breeze picked up again, rustling the willow branches by the water. It felt like the lake itself was breathing with him, like the world had shifted, even if only by an inch, towards something they both needed. The next time they met, the sky hung heavy with low clouds, the kind that stretched across Seattle like a wool blanket and muted the world into softer shades of gray. Marcus arrived early again. He told himself it was habit, but he knew it was more than that now. Something about Ava made him want to show up before she did, to be present, to be steady in a way she had rarely been offered. When she walked toward him, her steps slower than usual, he sensed something different immediately. Her shoulders were drawn in, her gaze fixed on the ground, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a shield. "Morning," he said gently. "Hi," she answered, and though she tried for a smile, it came out thin, brittle around the edges. He didn't push. They fell into step along the lake path again, the gravel crunching beneath their shoes. A few older walkers passed by, greeting them with soft nods, the kind that belonged to people who had seen enough life to understand when not to pry. Ava kept her eyes forward, watching the ducks skim across the water, wings tapping the lake's surface with small splashes. Something was weighing on her. He could feel it settling around her like fog. "You okay?" Marcus asked finally. She inhaled shakily. "There's something I should probably tell you." He nodded once, slow and calm, giving her room. "Whenever you're ready." They walked a little farther until they reached a quiet overlook, a small wooden platform jutting into the lake. Ava moved toward the railing and rested her hands on it, her fingers trembling. Marcus stood beside her, close enough to show he was there, not close enough to crowd her. "People think the scar just happened," she began. "Like it's a bad accident or a mistake or something I should hide. They don't understand what it really is." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I don't talk about it much. Most people don't want the truth. It makes them uncomfortable." "I'm not most people," Marcus whispered. She turned her face slightly toward him. The scar caught the light, its ridges softened by the gray morning. For the first time, she didn't flinch when he looked at it. "4 years ago," she said, "I was driving home from work. It was late November, cold, dark, everything wet from the rain." She paused, swallowing hard. A car up ahead lost control, skidded across 2 lanes and hit the divider. I stopped because I saw the front of the car smoking, and then her breath hitched. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, didn't dare shift the air around her. "The engine caught fire," Ava continued. "Flames started climbing the hood, and I heard someone screaming. Not an adult, a child." Her hand gripped the railing until her knuckles blanched. A little boy was trapped in the back seat. The door wouldn't open. His mother was unconscious in the front. There was no one else around. Her voice trembled, but she kept her gaze fixed on the water. "I didn't think," she said. "I just moved." Marcus felt a cold shiver slide down his spine, imagining the scene, the dark highway, the fire, the panic, the smell of burning rubber. "I tried breaking the window with a rock," she said. "It shattered, but I cut my hands doing it. When I reached in, the fire flared. I pulled the boy out, but..." She lifted her fingers to the left side of her face. "The flames caught me." Marcus's jaw tightened, not in anger but in awe and grief all at once. "The boy lived," she whispered. "He lived because you went in after him," Marcus said quietly. She nodded. "His mother survived too. They wrote me letters for a while, sent cards, pictures. They were grateful. They still are. But gratitude doesn't change how the world sees you." Her voice grew small. "Or how people look away." Marcus felt the weight of her words sink into the space between them, into the boards beneath their feet, into the cold air around them. She was breathing slowly, steadying herself like someone who had held that story inside for too long. "Ava," he murmured, but she lifted a hand, stopping him. "That's why I don't tell people," she said. "They hear the story and suddenly I'm some kind of hero, or tragedy, or both. And somehow that makes the staring worse, not better." She looked at him then, really looked at him, her eyes searching the depth of his expression as though bracing for a shift, a quick flash of pity, admiration, discomfort, anything that would confirm her fear that she was turning into a symbol instead of a person. But Marcus didn't let any of that surface. He kept his voice low, steady. "I'm glad you told me," he said, "not because of what it says about what you did, but because of what it says about who you are." She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "People talk about courage like it's some big dramatic thing," Marcus added, "like it belongs to soldiers or firefighters or folks who get medals. But real courage, the quiet kind, the kind nobody sees, that's rarer, harder." He paused, letting the words settle. "You saw danger and didn't run. That's courage. You saved a child. That's grace. And you kept going after the world changed on you. That's strength." Her breath trembled, the edges of her resolve softening. "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "Strong people almost never do," he replied. She looked away then, blinking quickly, as though she refused to let tears fall in public. "Everyone left after the accident," she said. "People I thought would stay. My boyfriend especially. He said he couldn't handle the new reality, as if my face was a reality that only happened to him." Marcus's jaw tightened. He was a coward. He was honest, Ava said softly. Just not kind. Honesty without compassion is cruelty in disguise, Marcus said. Don't dress it up as anything noble. She let out a faint, shaky exhale, almost a laugh, almost a sob. Sometimes, he added quietly, we're left by people who were never meant to walk the hard roads with us. Ava finally let her shoulders fall, the tension draining from her posture like water spilling from a too full cup. You're different, she said, her voice small but sincere. Different how? You don't look away. I don't see something to look away from, he replied. They stayed on the overlook until the breeze grew stronger and the lake rippled in uneven waves. Ava hugged her coat closer. I didn't tell you the story so you'd pity me, she said softly. I know, Marcus said. I told you because… She cleared her throat. Because you're the first person who makes me feel like I don't have to hide the truth. Marcus felt something settle deep inside him, solid and sure. Thank you for telling me, he said. I won't forget it. They walked back toward the trail in comfortable silence. Ava wasn't lighter exactly, but she was quieter in a different way, like someone who had unlocked a door she'd been afraid to touch. And as they moved along the path, steps aligned, branches rustling gently overhead, Marcus understood the truth of it. Today wasn't just another morning at Green Lake. Today was the moment she let him see the scar beneath the scar, the one no one talked about, the one that shaped every breath she took. And he walked beside her knowing this was no longer just coincidence or curiosity. It was connection. It was trust. It was the beginning of something neither of them had the language for yet, but both of them could feel, as real and steady as the water beside them. The next week unfolded quietly, but the quiet wasn't empty. It carried weight, soft, careful, shifting weight, like two people learning how to breathe in the same space without stepping on each other's wounds. Marcus found himself thinking about Ava in moments he didn't expect, while tightening a pipe under someone's sink, while waiting at a red light, while heating leftovers at midnight. Not in a desperate or obsessive way, just a steady presence, the kind that lingered when something meaningful had begun but hadn't yet been named. They met again at Green Lake on a Tuesday morning. The sky was clear for once, and sunlight shimmered across the water in broken pieces. Ava approached with her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her pace a little lighter than before. She still carried caution she always would, but today it felt softer around the edges. You beat me again, she said as she reached him. Old habits, Marcus replied. You ever break habits? Only the bad ones, he said. Still working on the rest. She smiled, and for a brief moment he saw a glimpse of who she must have been before the accident, someone who used to smile without thinking. They began walking, falling into a familiar rhythm. A group of older men sat near the water with fishing poles, talking about the weather as if it were the most pressing matter in the world. A woman in her late 60s passed them with a golden retriever in a red bandana. She greeted them warmly, without staring, without hesitating. Ava exhaled softly. I like older folks, she said. They know how to look at people. Maybe because they've lived enough to know it doesn't matter what's on the outside, Marcus said. Or because they've seen enough to recognize pain, she added quietly. They reached a wooden picnic table under a cluster of maples and sat across from each other. Ava opened her sketchbook, flipping through pages filled with trees, silhouettes, hands folded together, birds mid-flight. You draw a lot of moments, Marcus said. Not scenes. Moments are more honest, she said, brushing a leaf from the page. Scenes can lie. Moments don't. He nodded slowly. You ever draw anything from your childhood? She hesitated. Not really. Why not? I don't know, she said softly. Maybe I don't want to remember too much. Childhood feels like another lifetime, a different person. Sometimes we feel that way because the world changes us faster than we can keep up, Marcus said. She touched the edges of a sketch of a willow tree. What about you? She asked. Any childhood memories you actually like? He chuckled. Plenty, and plenty I don't. Tell me one you like. He leaned back slightly, letting the sun warm his shoulders. When I was a kid in Tacoma, the whole neighborhood used to gather on the block every Saturday afternoon. Old folks on porches, kids on bikes, somebody grilling something always. You couldn't walk 3 feet without someone asking if you were hungry. That sounds comforting, Ava said. It was. It felt like the world was smaller back then, but safer. People looked out for each other. Do you miss it? Every day, he admitted. But the world's different now. Different how? He hesitated, not because he didn't trust her, but because some truths came out slower, softer. Different, because I learned early on that being a black man meant people decided who you were before you opened your mouth. Teachers, store clerks, cops. Ava's expression softened. That must have been hard. It's just reality, he said. You get used to being seen as a problem before being seen as a person. He paused. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt sometimes. Ava looked down at her hands. I understand that more than I ever wanted to. Yeah, Marcus said gently. I know you do. She closed her sketchbook, holding it loosely in her lap. Can I ask you something? Anything, he said. Why haven't you asked me about the accident before today? He shrugged lightly. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Pushing people to open up just gets them to shut down. That's rare, she murmured. Most people get impatient, or they want the story because it makes them feel better about themselves. I don't need your pain to validate anything about me, Marcus said. I just want to know you. The breeze shifted, stirring the leaves above them. Ava breathed deeply, as if taking in the air differently now. It's strange, she said. I've known you such a short time, but talking to you feels easy, he offered. No, she corrected, though her voice was soft. It feels real. They began walking again, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The path curved around the lake, and sunlight flickered through the branches in thin slivers. Ava slowed when they passed a small playground where two children were climbing the jungle gym while their grandparents watched from a bench. Crisp laughter carried across the water. I used to love playgrounds, Ava said. Used to climb higher than everyone. You don't like them now? I like them fine, she said. I just don't like being near them anymore. Because it reminds you of the boy? She nodded. Sometimes when I hear a child scream or see them fall or cry, I get this rush in my chest, like I'm back on that highway, like I can smell the smoke. Marcus slowed his steps. That's trauma talking, he said gently. You didn't just save a kid, Ava. You lived through something that rewired your whole heart. It feels stupid, she said. It happened years ago. Pain doesn't have an expiration date. She gave him a look, one full of gratitude and disbelief at once, as if she couldn't fathom someone saying the exact thing she needed without her having to explain it. They walked in silence for a while longer, until the path opened into a small clearing with picnic tables. A few people sat talking, sipping from thermoses, bundled in sweaters. It smelled faintly of pine and roasted coffee. Mind if we sit? Marcus asked. Ava shook her head. They settled at a table, and he watched her trace patterns on the wood grain with her fingertip. Marcus, she said quietly. Yeah? Do you ever feel like you're still carrying something even after everyone tells you to put it down? He nodded slowly. Every day. How do you deal with it? Marcus thought for a moment before answering. By choosing people who don't make the load heavier. She swallowed, her eyes glimmering with something unspoken. When people left after the accident, I think I stopped believing anyone would stay. Then maybe it's time to unlearn that, he said softly. Because I'm here. She stared at him for a long beat, searching for lies, for cracks, for any sign he might disappear like the others. But all she found was steadiness. Genuine steadiness. I don't know what's happening between us, she murmured. You don't have to know yet, he replied. We're just getting to know each other, step by step. Ava looked down at her hands, then up at him. Is that enough? Yeah, he said. It's more than enough. A bird landed near their table, pecking at crumbs left by someone earlier. Ava smiled. It wasn't the tentative smile from before. It was small, but real, warm in a way the morning light seemed to lean toward. Then I guess we keep walking, she said. Marcus stood and offered his hand. Not a demand, not a symbol, just an invitation. She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. And when they continued down the path, side by side, something had changed, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. They weren't just learning each other anymore. They were beginning to trust each other. And trust, Marcus knew, was the first real step toward healing for people who'd had to be strong for far too long. Ava didn't sleep much the night before. She kept replaying pieces of her time with Marcus, his voice, his gentle steadiness, the way he looked at her without flinching. It wasn't romantic daydreaming. It was fear mixed with hope. A dangerous combination. When she arrived at Green Lake the next morning, she looked tired, eyes slightly shadowed. Marcus noticed immediately. "Rough night?" he asked. She rubbed her hands together as if warming them. "Something like that." He didn't press. They began walking, slower than usual, letting the quiet hang between them until she was ready to fill it. A couple in their 70s passed them with coffee cups in hand, offering a warm "good morning." Their easy familiarity gave the path a sense of safety, but even that didn't ease the tension pulling tight across Ava's shoulders. "Something's bothering you," Marcus said gently. She exhaled, long and unsteady. "Yeah, I guess. I'm waiting for the ground to shake." "What do you mean?" "Every time something good appears in my life," she said, "something bad follows. Like it's balancing the scales." She swallowed before adding quietly, "And you're good." Marcus slowed his steps. "Ava," he said, his voice deepening into something grounded, "I'm not a warning sign." "I know," she murmured, though she didn't sound convinced. "It just feels safer to assume the worst." "Safer doesn't always mean healthier." She didn't answer. They reached the pier overlooking the lake, where the water spread wide and gray, rippling under a mild breeze. Marcus leaned on the railing, waiting. Ava stood a few feet away, fidgeting with the sleeve of her coat. "When I woke up after the accident," she said finally, "the doctors told me I'd healed better than expected. They said I was strong, brave." She laughed softly, a humorless sound. "But lying in that hospital bed, all I could think was, what next? What else will be taken?" Marcus turned to her. "Do you still feel that way?" "Sometimes," she whispered. "Especially now." "Because of me?" She hesitated. "Because I like being around you," she admitted. "And liking someone means opening a door, and doors lead to things I can't control." "That's true," he said. "But doors also lead to things you'd never find if you kept them shut." A silence settled between them. Ava's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "There's something else," she said. He waited, steady as ever. "Last night," she continued, "my ex reached out." Marcus didn't react outwardly, though something sharp flickered inside him. "What did he want?" "He said he was in town. He asked if we could meet." Marcus's jaw tightened not possessively, but protectively. "And do you want to?" "No," Ava said quickly. "Absolutely not." "Then what's the problem?" "He always knew how to shake the ground under me. He had this way of making me question myself, making me feel like I should be grateful he stayed as long as he did." Her voice faltered. "He left the day I got home from the hospital. Said he couldn't love a life full of trauma," his words. Marcus felt heat crawl up the back of his neck, not anger at Ava, but at the cruelty she'd endured. "That wasn't love," he said. "That was convenience." Ava blinked, taken aback by the firmness in his tone. "I don't like that he reached out," she said quietly. "I don't like how it messed with my head." "Did you respond?" Marcus asked. She shook her head. "No." "Good." She looked at him, searching. "Does this change anything for you?" He shook his head. "No. People from your past don't scare me." She released a breath she'd been holding for minutes. "I'm scared he'll show up here," she confessed. "He's the type." Marcus didn't hesitate. "If he does, you won't be facing him alone." Her voice trembled. "You'd stay?" "Ava," he said gently. "I'm already here." She looked away quickly, her eyes glistening. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You're not. I don't want you to feel like you have to protect me." "I don't have to," he said. "I want to." That made her chest tighten in a way she didn't have words for. They began walking again, slower, more deliberate. She kept glancing around, as if expecting her past to materialize from behind a tree. Marcus noticed each time and subtly positioned himself between her and the nearest passerby, not to shield her visibly but to let her body relax a little with each step. "You don't have to do that," she said once. "Do what?" "Walk like you're guarding me." "I'm not guarding you," he replied. "I'm walking with you." Something warm flickered in her eyes. They reached a grassy area where older couples walked dogs or practiced Tai Chi. It was peaceful, safe, yet Ava's shoulders stayed tense. "What would you do?" she asked suddenly, "if he confronted me here?" "Depends," Marcus said. "On what?" "On how he talks to you, on whether he respects boundaries, on whether he understands the word leave." Ava shivered. "I don't want drama." "Neither do I," he said. "But some things are worth standing firm for." She stopped walking then, forcing him to stop too. "Why?" she asked, barely more than a whisper. Why would you stand firm for me?" Marcus held her gaze, his tone calm, unhurried. "Because you deserve someone who doesn't flinch at your scars, someone who doesn't run when things get messy, someone who sees you not the trauma, not the damage, not the fear. You." Her eyes burned. "I'm still healing," she said. "So am I," he replied softly. "Just in different ways." She stepped closer, not touching him but closing the distance between them. "This feels big," she said. "Bigger than I expected. Good things usually are. What if it falls apart?" Marcus's voice dropped into something deep, steady. "Then we'll handle it when it does. But I'm not planning on going anywhere." Her breath trembled. "I don't know how to trust that." "Then let me show you." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the world blur. When she opened them, something had shifted, something small but real, like a knot beginning to loosen. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay," he echoed. They started walking again, the air around them warmer despite the Seattle chill. Ava's steps were still cautious, but now they carried purpose. Marcus walked beside her not as a protector or a savior, but as someone choosing the same direction. And for the first time since the accident, Ava let herself believe just a little that maybe the ground beneath her didn't have to shake forever. In the next morning felt heavier than the others, thick with an uneasiness Ava couldn't quite shake. She woke early, earlier than necessary, and sat at the edge of her bed with her fingers curled tight around her phone. No new messages, no unknown numbers, no unexpected notifications. It should have comforted her, but instead it left a hollow tension in her chest, like waiting for thunder after seeing lightning. When she finally stepped out into the crisp Seattle air, she pulled her coat tighter and kept her head down, her breath fogging in short bursts. She didn't know if Marcus would notice the shift in her energy, but she hoped he would, and she hoped he wouldn't. She found him waiting near the South Trail entrance, hands in his pockets, watching the lake with the stillness of someone who knew how to stand firm. When he turned and saw her, his expression softened instantly. "Morning," he said. "You okay?" "I'm here," she replied, which wasn't exactly an answer but wasn't a lie either. Marcus nodded gently. "That's enough." They began walking the same familiar loop, the gravel crunching under their shoes. Green Lake was busier today, people jogging, families pushing strollers, older couples holding hands as they ambled along the path. Ava noticed every face, every glance, every shadow that seemed to stretch too close. She hated feeling this jumpy, this unsettled, this braced for impact. She hated that one text from her past could undo weeks of slow, careful healing. Marcus kept his pace even, but she sensed he was watching her more than usual. Not in a worried way, more like someone quietly scanning the horizon for approaching storms. "You look tired," he said softly. "Did he message you again?" "No," she said. "But that almost makes it worse." "Because you're waiting for something to happen," he finished. She nodded. "My head keeps replaying all the ways it could go wrong." "That's trauma talking," Marcus said. "It rewrites the script before anything even happens." Ava exhaled shakily. "I just hate feeling like he still has any influence on me." "He doesn't," Marcus answered firmly. "Fear does, and fear can be unlearned." "You make that sound easier than it is." "Never said it was easy," he replied. "Just possible." She looked at him, gratitude flickering briefly across her eyes. They walked past the willow trees, their branches trailing like long fingers over the water. Ava slowed near one of them, brushing the trunk lightly with her hand. "I used to sit under this tree a long time ago," she said, "before everything happened." "What did you do here?" "Sketch, breathe, pretend the world made sense." "Does it make sense today?" Marcus asked. She gave a small, humorless smile. "Not even close." Marcus leaned against the tree beside her. "Maybe it doesn't have to make sense. Maybe it just has to feel survivable." She swallowed. "You always have a way of saying the exact thing." "It's not planned," he admitted. "It's just how it comes out." Something eased inside her, just slightly. They continued their walk until they reached the wooden overlook, where she told him the truth about the fire. It felt different today, less confessional, more like neutral ground. She stepped to the railing again, resting her palms on the cool wood. Marcus stayed beside her, close enough that their shoulders would touch if either of them swayed. "I didn't tell you the whole thing yesterday," she said suddenly. Marcus didn't move. "You don't owe me anything you're not ready to say." "I know," she whispered, "but I want to." She inhaled slowly. After the accident, when I went back to work, there were rumors. People asking if I'd caused the fire, if I was drunk, if I'd made everything up. Marcus's face hardened. Why would they say that? Because the truth made them uncomfortable, she said. Because accidents that aren't tragic or heroic are easier to accept. But accidents where someone did something brave? People don't like that. It makes them feel small. Marcus shook his head. People fear what reminds them of their own cowardice. Maybe, she said. But it hurt, a lot. And my ex, he didn't defend me. He said drawing attention to myself would make things worse. Marcus exhaled sharply. That man didn't deserve 10 minutes of your life. Ava's voice trembled as she continued. I guess part of me is scared he'll come back and ruin this too. Marcus took a step closer, not touching her, but grounding her with his presence. Ava, nobody gets to ruin this except us. And I'm not planning on letting that happen. She looked at him then, eyes wide and wet, but before she could say anything more, a voice behind them cut sharply through the air. Ava? She froze. Marcus turned first. A man stood a few yards away, early 30s, clean-shaven, neatly dressed, his expression a mix of shock and something colder underneath. Ava's breath hitched. Evan, she whispered. Marcus felt the shift in her body, fear, dread, the old instinct to shrink. Evan took a step closer. I thought that was you. Marcus moved subtly, placing himself half a step in front of Ava, not blocking her completely, just enough to make it clear she wasn't alone. Evan's eyes flicked to him, annoyance briefly flashing across his face. Who's this? A friend, Ava said, her voice small but steady. Evan's gaze sharpened. A friend, he repeated. I see. Marcus kept his voice calm. You need something? Evan's jaw tightened. I just wanted to talk to Ava. We have history. History doesn't mean access, Marcus replied calmly. Evan scoffed. I'm not here to cause trouble. Then what are you here for? Marcus asked. Evan took a breath, straightening his shoulders. Ava, I think we should talk. Alone. Ava's pulse hammered. She felt the old fear bubbling up, that familiar sense of shrinking under his words, under the weight of his expectations. Then Marcus spoke, gentle but firm. She doesn't owe you a conversation. Evan's eyes narrowed. You don't speak for her. Ava swallowed, forcing her voice to steady. He's right, she said. But I also don't owe you anything, Evan. Evan's expression cracked for a moment, a flicker of disbelief. Ava, come on. After everything, she interrupted. I found peace, and you're not part of it. Marcus felt her words like a quiet triumph. Evan stared at her, stunned. Then his face darkened not with rage, but with wounded pride. Fine, he said stiffly, if that's how it is. It is, Ava replied. Evan nodded once, coldly, and walked away. Ava's breath collapsed out of her, trembling. Marcus didn't touch her, but he leaned slightly closer, his voice low. You did that, he said. Not me. Not him. You. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. That felt terrifying. It was also brave, Marcus said. The quiet kind. The real kind. Ava looked up at him, eyes raw but strong. I'm shaking. That's what healing feels like sometimes, he said. Like your body learning a new way to stand. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment settle inside her. When she opened them again, something had changed, something subtle but powerful. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was choosing. And she wasn't choosing fear. She wasn't choosing the past. She was choosing today, choosing herself, and maybe, slowly, choosing him. The wind carried a sharper chill the next morning, the kind that hinted winter was waiting just a few weeks beyond the horizon. Green Lake was quieter than usual, fewer people on the path, the air thinner, the world somehow softer after the chaos of the day before. Marcus arrived early again, scanning the area out of habit now, not with paranoia, but with awareness. He didn't expect Evan to return, but he also knew men like Evan didn't like unfinished endings. When Ava approached, he noticed it instantly, the exhaustion in her eyes, the faint tremor in her breath, the kind of emotional fatigue that came after doing something brave but draining. Still, when she saw him, something in her expression loosened, just a fraction, but enough to tell him she felt safer now that he was there. Morning, she said, pulling her coat tighter. Morning, Marcus replied. You holding up? She let out a breath, half a laugh, half a sigh. Barely. They fell into their usual pace, but today the silence between them wasn't loaded, it was needed. Ava walked with her head down, watching the gravel shift beneath her shoes. Marcus stayed close, not touching but present, a steady heartbeat beside her. "I didn't sleep much," she said finally. "Makes sense," Marcus replied. "Yesterday was a lot. It feels surreal," she whispered. "Like I stepped back into an old nightmare, but this time I wasn't trapped in it." "You weren't," Marcus said. "You walked through it." She didn't answer right away. Then softly, almost surprised, "I did, didn't I?" "You did." They reached a quiet bend in the trail, where the willow trees leaned over the water in heavy green arcs. Ava stopped there, brushing her fingers lightly along the hanging branches. "Yesterday," she said, "I expected the worst version of myself to appear, the scared one, the one who shut down, the one who let him decide who I was." She looked up at Marcus, steady but fragile. But that didn't happen. Marcus stepped closer, just an inch. "Because you're not that person anymore." "Maybe," she said, "but part of me is terrified he'll come back." "If he does," Marcus replied calmly, "he'll find a different Ava, one who doesn't break at the sound of his voice." She looked away, wiping a tear she didn't want him to see. "Do you know what scared me the most?" she whispered. "Not him, not the past. It was the fear that yesterday would make you walk away." Marcus's expression softened completely, his voice dropping into something steady and certain. "Ava," he said, "I'm not here because it's easy. I'm here because I choose to be." Her breath caught. "I don't want you to feel like you've taken on some responsibility." "I haven't," he said. "I'm just showing up. That's all." She blinked back emotion, her fingers twisting nervously at the hem of her sleeve. "No one's ever shown up for me like that." "Then let me be the first," he murmured. They resumed walking, Ava's pace slightly lighter, though her shoulders still carried the faint tremble of adrenaline left over from the previous day. "Marcus," she said after a while. "Yeah? Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." She hesitated, choosing her words. "What scares you?" He exhaled slowly. "A few things." "Like what?" "Failing the people I care about," he said quietly. "Making the wrong choice when it matters. Being misunderstood because of things I can't change." She absorbed his words carefully. "You mean, because you're a black man?" He nodded. "Yeah, that's part of it. I grew up always having to read a room twice, walk slower in certain neighborhoods, keep my hands visible when talking to cops, smile even when I didn't feel like smiling." Ava's chest tightened. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted, "but you learn to carry it. Doesn't mean it doesn't weigh on you." She stepped closer, the vulnerability in her voice matching his. "When I look at you, I don't see someone weighed down. I see someone who carries things carefully, someone who cares. Sometimes caring is the heaviest thing," Marcus said. "But it's also the thing that keeps me human." Ava looked at him then, deeply, like she could see the layers beneath his calm exterior. "I'm glad you told me that." "I trust you," he said simply. Her breath trembled, as though those 3 words hit deeper than he meant them to. They reached the far end of the lake, where fewer people walked and the trees grew denser, muffling the city noise. Ava paused near a bench and sank onto it, clutching her sketchbook. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "what if yesterday never happened? Would I still be carrying all that weight? Would I still be afraid of him?" "Fear doesn't disappear when the threat disappears," Marcus said, sitting beside her. "Sometimes it lingers even longer." "That's what I hate," she whispered, "that he still has that effect on me." "He doesn't," Marcus said. "Not anymore. Yesterday wasn't about him. It was about you." Ava shook her head. "It felt like I was breaking." "Maybe breaking is what allowed the fear to fall out," Marcus said gently. "Maybe it needed to crack." She looked down at her sketchbook, running her hand across the cover. "I drew something when I got home last night," she said. "Do you want to see?" "I always want to see." She opened to a fresh page. It wasn't a portrait. It wasn't a willow tree. It wasn't even a scene. It was 2 silhouettes, walking side by side, uneven at first, then aligned perfectly, as if the space between them had slowly closed over time. The lines were raw, hastier than her usual careful style, but the emotion in them was unmistakable. "This is us," she whispered. Marcus stared at the drawing, his throat tightening with something he didn't expect. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's honest," she replied. "Maybe too honest." He looked at her, his voice low. "Ava, are you afraid of what's happening between us?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled her knees up slightly, her shoulders curling inward. "I'm afraid of trusting it," she said. "But I'm more afraid of losing it." Marcus placed his hand on the bench, close to hers but not touching an invitation, never a demand. "Then don't lose it," he murmured. "Don't walk away from something real." Ava stared at his hand, breathing unevenly. Then, very slowly, she placed her hand over his. Her fingers trembled, but they didn't pull back. The world around them softened, the water, the trees, the distant echo of conversations, until it felt like only the two of them existed on that quiet stretch of the lake. Marcus didn't squeeze her hand. He didn't move. He just stayed, present, still, real, and Ava felt something inside her shift, not a break this time, but an opening. The kind that happens only when someone finally feels safe enough to let the light in. The next 2 days passed with a strange mix of calm and tension, like the air before a storm that might or might not break. Ava and Marcus kept meeting at Green Lake, shorter walks, quieter ones. Their conversations grew softer, deeper, as though they were learning to speak a language only the two of them shared. On Thursday morning, Ava arrived looking tired again, but not weighed down like before. This time, it looked more like the exhaustion that comes after holding yourself together for too long. Marcus noticed the moment she approached. "Did you sleep?" he asked gently. "A little," she said, brushing hair from her face. "Enough to walk." "Then we walk," he replied. They headed down the familiar path. The lake was glassy, barely rippling. Birds skimmed the surface. A few older men fished off the pier, their quiet voices drifting over the water. For a while, the silence between Ava and Marcus was peaceful, almost meditative. But halfway down the trail, Ava's hand began to tremble again. Marcus slowed. "Talk to me," he said softly. She stopped walking. The gravel beneath her shoes shifted, small stones rolling as she steadied herself. "I thought I was okay after seeing Evan," she whispered. "I thought I handled it." "You did handle it," Marcus said. "Better than anyone could ask." "Maybe," she said, "but last night, everything in my head cracked open again." Her voice tightened. "The accident, the fire, the screams, Evan leaving, people staring, the whispers at work, all of it. It hit me like it was happening again." Marcus took a slow breath, letting her speak at her own pace. "I felt like I was back there," she said. "Like I was standing on that highway again, watching the flames crawl toward me, waiting for someone to pull me away. But no one did." She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry. I don't know why." "Don't apologize," he said. "You're allowed to feel the things you survived." She hugged her arms around herself. "It's just, I thought I was past it. I thought I'd healed." "Healing isn't a straight line," Marcus said quietly. "It loops, it curves. It hits you when you least expect it." "Doesn't feel fair," she whispered. "It isn't," he said. "But that doesn't mean you're weak." Ava looked out at the water, the reflection of clouds breaking apart and reforming across the surface. "You know what scares me the most?" she said. "Not the fire, not Evan, not even the scar." "What then?" She swallowed hard. "The idea that maybe I'll always be broken in some way." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Ava, you're not broken. You're bruised. You're human. And you're healing." She closed her eyes, letting the words sink in like warm light on a cold morning. When she opened them again, tears clung to her lashes. "I don't know why this is so hard," she whispered. "Because what happened to you was hard," he said simply, "and because you kept going anyway." They walked slowly toward the older part of the trail, where big cedars lined the path. The ground felt softer here. The world felt quieter. Ava wiped her eyes again. "There's something I've never told anyone," she said, "about the accident." Marcus's gaze softened even more. "Whenever you're ready." "When I pulled the boy out of the car," she paused, breath shaking. "I remember thinking, I hope I'm doing the right thing. I hope I don't mess this up. I hope I don't make it worse." "You didn't," Marcus said. "You saved him." "But I didn't feel brave," she said. "I felt terrified. My whole body wanted to run." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Marcus replied. "It's doing the right thing while fear burns through you." Ava looked at him, eyes shimmering. "What if there's nothing courageous left in me?" Marcus shook his head. "There's more courage in you than in anyone I've ever met." She exhaled a shaky breath. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything, he said. Just let yourself believe it. They walked a little farther until they reached a bench facing the lake. Ava sat first. Marcus sat beside her. The silence felt comforting now, not suffocating. After a while, Ava spoke again. Do you ever feel like the world expects you to carry more than you should? Marcus chuckled softly, not out of humor, but out of recognition. Every day, he said. Being a black man means waking up already carrying something. Expectations, assumptions, fears that aren't yours. But you still walk, and you still try to do right. Ava nodded slowly. Maybe we're more similar than I thought. We're both survivors, Marcus said. Different battles, same weight. Ava looked down at her hands, then at him. Marcus, yeah? Why are you still here? His answer came without hesitation. Because I want to be. She stared at him for a long moment. Even after yesterday? Even after all of this? Ava, none of that makes me want to leave. Her voice dropped to a fragile whisper. What if I fall apart again? Then I'll sit with you until the pieces settle. She drew a trembling breath, one that sounded like relief wrapped in fear. I don't want to be a burden, she said again. You're not, he reiterated softly. You're a person who's been carrying too much alone for too long. The wind stirred, rustling through the cedar branches above them. A few walkers passed behind the bench, offering polite nods, familiar and kind in the quiet morning. Ava exhaled and leaned back against the bench, finally letting her body relax. Yesterday, she said softly, when Evan showed up, I thought I was going to collapse. But then you were there, not saving me, not fighting for me, just beside me, and it made me want to stand up straighter. Good, he said, because that strength was yours, not mine. She tilted her head toward him. Then what part was you? The part where I didn't let you stand alone. Her breath hitched. That meant more than you know. Marcus nodded slowly, his voice dropping to something almost tender. It meant something to me, too. She let the quiet fill the moment before speaking again. I think yesterday broke something inside me, she said. Something old, something that needed to break. Sometimes the break is what lets the healing in, Marcus replied. Like letting air into a wound. Yeah, she whispered. Something like that. They sat there until the shadows shifted across the water, until Ava's breathing steadied, until the world around them felt less sharp. When she finally stood, a small but real calm settled over her shoulders. Marcus rose beside her. Better? He asked. Not fixed, she said, but lighter. Lighter is a good start. She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Marcus? Thank you for being here. Always, he said. They walked the rest of the trail slowly, side by side. No urgency, no fear, just two people moving forward at the same pace, step by step, carrying what they could, letting go of what they didn't need anymore. And for the first time in a long time, the weight Ava carried felt like something she no longer had to hold alone. The following morning, the lake was wrapped in a pale, early winter haze, the kind that softened every outline and made the world feel quieter than it truly was. Ava arrived a little later than usual, bundled in a thicker coat, her scarf tucked neatly beneath her chin. Marcus noticed immediately that something in her posture had changed. She wasn't folded inward the way she had been for days. She wasn't fully open either, but there was a steadiness in her step, a subtle reclaiming of her ground. Morning, she said, voice carrying a gentler warmth than the day before. Morning, Marcus replied, his eyes softening. You look better. I feel a little better, she admitted. Not perfect, just steady. Steady is good, he said. Steady keeps you moving forward. They began walking, the quiet crackle of leaves beneath their shoes mixing with the distant hum of early joggers. The lake shimmered faintly, the light bouncing across it in thin slivers. The world had a calm to it, the kind that felt earned, like they had fought through something and now stood on the other side. Ava inhaled deeply. I've been thinking, she said. Dangerous, Marcus teased lightly. She nudged him with her shoulder barely, but it was the first time she'd initiated any kind of touch. Don't make me regret saying that. I won't, he promised. What's on your mind? She tucked her hands into her pockets and kept her gaze forward. About yesterday, and everything before that. I keep realizing how much I've carried alone, how much I've kept locked inside because I thought sharing it would make me weak. Marcus nodded. A lot of people think that. But it's not true, she said. Talking about it doesn't weaken me. It's the silence that does. He smiled quietly. I'm glad you're seeing that. They continued down the trail, the air crisp around them, and Ava's voice softened. Last night I sat in my apartment and looked at old drawings I haven't touched in years. Stuff from before the accident, before everything went sideways. How did that feel? Marcus asked. Strange, she said. Like meeting a version of myself I forgot existed. She was hopeful, unafraid, open. Sounds like someone worth remembering. Ava nodded slowly. I think she's still in there, just buried. Maybe she's not buried, Marcus said. Maybe she's been waiting for you to make room for her again. Ava's breath caught in her throat, not in fear, but in recognition. They reached the old cedar grove where the air always seemed cooler, where the shadows moved differently. Ava stopped walking and looked up through the branches, letting the shifting light wash over her. I didn't tell you something, she said quietly. About Evan? Marcus asked. No, she said. About me. He waited, steady as always. I've never let anyone get close to me since the accident. Her voice wavered. Not emotionally, not physically, not anything. Marcus's posture softened, his tone lowering. That makes sense. Does it? She whispered. Because I feel like everyone else my age is living normal lives, dating, trusting, trying, failing, trying again, and I'm still stuck in the moment my face caught fire. Marcus stepped a little closer, not touching her, just anchoring the space between them. There's nothing wrong with healing at your own pace, he said. Trauma doesn't care about timelines. Ava looked at the ground, the dried pine needles scattered beneath her feet. I know, but it's hard not to compare. You're comparing two different worlds, Marcus said gently. People who haven't lived what you lived can't measure your pace, and they shouldn't. Ava met his eyes then, vulnerability shimmering beneath her steady gaze. I'm telling you this because the closer we get, the more afraid I become of messing it all up. You're not messing anything up, Marcus assured her. You're learning, and so am I. She stared at him for a long moment before whispering, I don't want to hurt you. You won't, he said. I'm more worried you'll hurt yourself trying not to. She swallowed, the emotion rising in her chest. Yesterday, after everything happened, I kept thinking about how different things feel with you, how safe, how real. Marcus felt something warm tighten in his chest, but he kept his voice soft. I'm glad it feels that way. It scares me, she added, because if I lose this, I don't know what that'll do to me. He stepped closer then, slowly, giving her every second to pull back. She didn't. Ava, he said softly, you don't build a connection by trying to protect yourself from it. You build it by letting yourself be seen. Ava's breath trembled. Seen scares me. Seen scares a lot of people, he said, but it's also the only way to be known. She closed her eyes just for a moment, letting his words sink deep. When she opened them, she said something she'd been carrying for a long time, something she needed to release. The scar isn't what I'm afraid of, she said quietly. I'm afraid of being lovable with it. Marcus exhaled, slow and full of feeling. Ava, he murmured. The scar doesn't take anything away from you. It adds. It shows your bravery. It shows your survival. It shows your heart. She shook her head. Most people don't see it that way. Most people don't deserve to. Her eyes glistened. And you? Me? His voice dropped to a gentle certainty. Every day I spend with you, I see more strength, more beauty, more soul than most people show in a lifetime. She blinked rapidly, a tear slipping free before she could catch it. Marcus didn't reach out, not yet. He let her close the space, and she did. Ava stepped into him slowly, almost as if testing the world's permission, and rested her forehead lightly against his chest. Marcus froze, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Then, when she didn't pull away, he lowered his chin slightly, letting the moment settle around them like warm light. Is this okay? He whispered. Yes, she said, her voice shaking. More than okay. He raised one hand and placed it gently at her back, not forceful, not possessive, just present. Ava breathed against him, her shoulders loosening for the first time in days. I'm tired of being afraid, she whispered against his shirt. Then let me be here while you learn not to be, he said. They stayed like that for a long while, two people who had survived different kinds of fire, leaning into each other like their bodies finally remembered what safety felt like. When they finally continued walking, Ava kept close beside him, their arms brushing every so often. She didn't apologize for it. She didn't overthink it, and Marcus didn't pull away. Not once. For the first time in years, the walls Ava had built around herself weren't closing in. They were moving slowly, carefully letting in a glimpse of something she hadn't believed in for a long time. The possibility of being held without being hurt. The morning after Ava leaned into Marcus for the first time felt different before she even opened her eyes. There was no knot in her chest, no rush of dread waiting at the foot of her bed. Only a soft awareness, like something inside her had been rearranged gently in the night. She got dressed slowly, choosing a warm sweater and gloves, not because she wanted to hide, but because Seattle's early winter air demanded it. When she stepped outside, the cold brushed her cheeks, sharp but clean, the kind of cold that woke a person up in the right way. Marcus was already at Green Lake, standing near the pier with his hands tucked into his pockets, scanning the horizon as if making sure the world was safe before she arrived. When he saw her, his shoulders relaxed, a quiet smile warming his face. "Morning, Ava." "Morning," she said, and this time the word didn't feel like something she had to push out, it just came. They started walking the loop, slower than ever, not because either of them was tired, but because there was no need to rush the last chapter of a story that had taken its time unfolding. Ava kept glancing at him, not nervously, but with the kind of curiosity that grows when someone begins to let themselves wonder about the future instead of fearing it. "How are you feeling today?" Marcus asked. "Like I can breathe," she said, like something finally clicked. "Good," he replied. "You deserve that." She smiled softly. "I'm realizing that healing isn't just about surviving what happened. It's also about letting something new happen." Marcus nodded. "Sometimes that's the hardest part." They reached the cedar grove, where everything had shifted the day before. Ava paused, letting her fingers trail over the rough bark of one of the old trees. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I used to think letting someone care about me was dangerous. Like if I let them in, they'd see everything broken inside me." "Nothing about you is broken," Marcus said, "but I understand why you felt that way. It's strange," she continued. "You didn't try to fix me. You didn't tell me to be strong or to get over it. You just stayed." Marcus lifted his shoulders slightly. "It's what people do when they care." She looked at him then, her eyes holding something deeper than gratitude, something steadier, something choosing. "I don't think I ever understood what real care looked like until you." Marcus breathed out slowly, the weight of her words hitting him with quiet force. "Ava," she stepped closer, hands trembling inside her gloves. "I'm not saying I'm ready for everything, or that I know what comes next. I'm still figuring out how to trust myself again." "That's enough," Marcus said. "You don't need to have all the answers. But I do know one thing," she continued. "I don't want to walk this alone anymore." Marcus took a slow step toward her. "You don't have to," she exhaled shakily, the last remnants of fear loosening inside her. "What if this goes wrong?" she whispered. "What if I fall apart again? What if life gets messy?" "It will," Marcus said simply. "Things will go wrong sometimes. You will fall apart sometimes. Life will get messy. But none of that scares me." Her eyes softened in a way that made the world around them dim a little. "Why?" "Because I want to be here," he said. "For all of it, not just the good parts." She felt her heart twist painfully, beautifully, like something bruised finally waking up. Ava reached out then, slowly, carefully, giving herself permission to be seen in the way she feared most. She took off one glove, just one. Then she extended her bare hand toward him, palm open. Marcus understood. It wasn't about touch, it was about trust. He removed his glove and gently took her hand, warm skin meeting warm skin. Ava inhaled sharply, not out of fear, but because she had never expected something so simple to feel so monumental. They stood there for a moment, the world soft around them. She spoke first, voice trembling with truth. "When the accident happened," she said, "I thought my life had shrunk. I thought the world had gotten smaller, but maybe it was just waiting for me to open it again." Marcus tightened his hand around hers, not a squeeze, just a settling. "You're opening it now." Ava looked out across the lake, where a few older couples walked hand in hand, their laughter floating lightly through the cold morning air. "Do you think people like us, people who've been through too much, can really find something good again?" she asked. Marcus followed her gaze. "I think people like us are the ones who appreciate good the most," he said. "We know what the dark feels like. That's why we protect the light when it shows up." Ava swallowed, emotion rising. "Maybe this is the light," she whispered. "Maybe it is," Marcus said. They resumed walking, hands intertwined, steps slow and steady. Ava looked down at their joined hands, almost disbelieving. "You know what I realized?" she said. "What?" "I used to think my scar was a reminder of what I lost. But now—" She paused, voice thick with the weight of revelation. "Now it feels like proof that I made it out. Proof that I didn't give up." Marcus smiled gently. "It's a badge of honor," he said. "A mark of survival." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Do you really see me that way?" "Every day," he whispered. "Every day I see your strength before you do." Her breath hitched softly. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she said something that carried the quiet force of truth. "I think I'm ready," she said, "for whatever comes next." Marcus cupped her hand lightly between both of his. "Then I'll walk with you," he said, "step by step." "Step by step," she echoed. They finished the loop around the lake, moving at a pace that felt less like walking and more like choosing a direction together. When they reached the end of the trail, Ava didn't let go of his hand. Not out of fear, not out of need, but out of something new, something hopeful, something earned. "Marcus," she said softly. "Yeah? Thank you for helping me find the part of myself I thought I lost." He shook his head gently. "You didn't lose her," he said. "She was waiting for you." Ava smiled, real, warm, unguarded. "Feels like she's finally here." "She is," Marcus said, "and she's stronger than ever." They stood there a while longer, watching the morning light spread across Green Lake, two people shaped by different fires, finding justice not in revenge, not in confrontation, but in the quiet, radical act of healing. Together. The story teaches a simple but powerful truth. Healing isn't about pretending the pain never happened, it's about finding someone who sees your scars and doesn't flinch. Ava and Marcus remind us that courage can be quiet, trust can grow slowly, and love often begins where fear once lived. We learn that the past may shape us, but it never has to define our future. And sometimes the deepest kind of justice is choosing hope again, with someone who chooses you back.